Ever wonder what your silence says when your words go quiet? Not the kind of silence that ignores or punishes, but the kind that speaks, the kind that lingers. Have you ever asked yourself, if I walked away today, who would notice and who would feel it? We live in a world obsessed with noise, notifications, posts, check-ins, always connected, rarely present. And in that world, silence has become a rarity. But here's the truth. Silence is not emptiness. It's a mirror. And when a man steps back, when he becomes the quiet in her chaos, he reveals something powerful, not about her, but about himself. This isn't about ghosting, manipulation, or passive aggression. No. This is about presence and what it means when it's gone. Because people don't really miss someone who's always available. They miss someone whose presence brought weight, meaning, and calm to their life. The absence of a real man doesn't go unnoticed. It reverberates. If you've ever been the guy who gave and gave, only to be overlooked. If you've ever felt like your efforts were expected, not appreciated. If you've ever wondered, what would happen if I just stopped trying? This video is your answer. Today we'll walk through the emotional terrain of what happens in her heart, her ego, and her mind when a man of value stops chasing and starts choosing himself. You'll learn what your silence teaches her, how your distance creates clarity, and why your absence is not a weakness, but a tool. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And a man who understands the value of his own presence doesn't waste it on those who take it for granted. He walks with intention, even when that means walking away. We'll explore 7 deep truths about her, about you, and about the kind of power that needs no validation. You'll discover how to make her miss you not by vanishing, but by becoming someone whose presence she has to earn, not assume. So if this message speaks to a place in you that's tired of noise, tired of chasing, tired of proving, then listen, watch, reflect, and if this resonates, if something inside you says, finally someone understands, then like the video. Share your thoughts below. Subscribe to Stoic now, because your voice, your story, might be exactly what another man needs to hear to remember his own worth. This isn't just a video, it's a turning point. Let's begin. Number 1. Absence tests. Value absence has a peculiar way of telling the truth. It doesn't need loud declarations or grand exits. It simply unfolds like a quiet question hanging in the air. Was your presence a blessing or merely background noise? There's a stillness that follows when you step back, and in that stillness, the truth begins to echo. A woman who once took your presence for granted now confronts a silence that cannot be ignored. If you ever brought depth, direction, and grounded masculine energy into her life, your absence becomes more than a missing voice. It becomes a mirror reflecting everything you once added. The laughter, the presence, the unspoken protection, it all rushes back in memory, not just through nostalgia, but through contrast, because now it's gone. Modern relationships often deceive men into believing that consistent availability is the path to respect. That replying instantly, always being there, somehow earns loyalty. But what it often earns is complacency. Seneca warned, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." The same applies to presence. When you're always available, always reaching out, always trying to prove your worth, you don't raise your value, you dilute it. A man of substance knows this. He knows that scarcity isn't manipulation, it's clarity. When you step back, her mind begins to wander, not out of manipulation but curiosity. What happened to him? Was I really important to him, or was I just a convenience? And the longer you hold your ground, the more powerful that reflection becomes. If she sees your absence and feels a void, one that no one else can quite fill, you've done more by walking away than others do by chasing. But there's another side, the uncomfortable truth. If your absence brings her peace, if she doesn't reach, doesn't feel, doesn't question, then that too is clarity. Because absence not only reveals your value, it reveals hers. Was she drawn to your depth or merely your validation? Did she feel seen and challenged or simply admired? Let's take a story. A man I once mentored, sharp, intelligent, quietly confident, had been dating a woman for nearly a year. He constantly adjusted his life to accommodate hers, always texting first, always apologizing, even when she was dismissive. Eventually, exhausted, he stopped. He didn't make an announcement, no anger, just space, silence. At first, she didn't flinch. Then days passed, weeks, and suddenly she started reaching, not out of love, but out of confusion. Because what she missed wasn't him, it was the control, the predictability. He recognized that, and he didn't return. That decision changed his life. He went on to build a new relationship, one built not on availability, but mutual admiration. One where his absence was missed because his presence had mattered. So ask yourself, if you disappeared from her life today, would she feel the loss as a wound or a relief? Because that answer tells you everything you need to know, not about her alone, but about how you've shown up. Your job is not to be missed. Your job is to be meaningful. And when you are, absence becomes not just a gap, but a signal, a message, a memory, something she replays in silence because it mattered. Because you mattered. Absence, when wielded with purpose, is not a punishment. It's a reflection, one that reveals what noise cannot. And that, my brother, is the quiet power of walking away. Number 2, her ego shatters in silence. In the early stages of absence, when the man no longer texts first, no longer checks in, no longer orbits around her world, something subtle but seismic begins to stir in a woman's psyche. It's not love, not yet, it's ego. That quiet voice inside that says, why isn't he chasing me? It's the fracture in the mirror she's been holding, the reflection that's no longer being validated, the attention she no longer receives. We live in a culture that has conditioned both men and women to tie their self-worth to external feedback. Social media thrives on this principle. Likes, comments, views, and relationships have not escaped this trend. Many women have grown used to being pursued, admired, validated, especially in the early phases of romantic encounters. So, when that validation disappears, the silence becomes deafening, not because she misses him yet, but because her ego does. Her pride begins to unravel in questions. Did I say something wrong? Is he losing interest? Has he found someone better? These aren't heart-level concerns. They are identity-level hits. A woman who is accustomed to being the sun in a man's universe begins to feel eclipsed. And in that emotional eclipse, insecurity is born. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Her reaction to your silence becomes the true test, not of her feelings, but of her inner strength. Will she sit with the discomfort and reflect, or will she lash out? Indirect posts, attention-seeking behavior, flirting with others to provoke a reaction. Because the silence is no longer a void, it's a mirror, and in that mirror, if her ego is the dominant driver, she won't see you clearly, only herself. That's why many women begin to perform rather than connect. They dress differently, post strategically, reappear in subtle ways, not out of desire but to reclaim the power they feel slipping away. Let me share a real-world scenario. A man, a calm, grounded leader, dated a woman who was used to being pursued. She wasn't rude or malicious, just conditioned by a world that rewarded beauty with effortlessness. He gave her time, attention, care, but one day he simply pulled back. No drama, no accusations, just space. She noticed instantly, but said nothing. Instead, her posts increased, her selfies sharpened, her nights out became publicized. She didn't miss him. She missed the attention, and yet he didn't react. He stayed rooted in his purpose, and over time her strategies grew desperate until the illusion broke. She realized she had been fighting not for the relationship, but for the return of her mirror. This is the power of silence. It forces authenticity, because when no one is watching, when no one is validating, the truth of who we are surfaces. And if she still reaches for you, not through games but with grace, then her ego has been humbled by the silence. And what remains may be real. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Likewise, a woman's reaction to your absence is only meaningful if it reveals truth, not just noise. When her ego breaks in silence, it either reveals depth or confirms distraction. So remember this: your silence is not just absence, it is a stage. And on that stage, the real play begins, not with words, but with absence. If her ego fractures, and she chooses self-awareness over performance, then something deeper may emerge. But if she fills the silence with vanity and attention-seeking, then you have your answer. Let her ego shatter. Let the silence echo. Because what endures after the noise is gone, that's the truth worth listening to. Number 3, power dynamics. Shift control is a delicate illusion. Often it doesn't announce its arrival or its departure. It simply shifts, quietly, subtly, and when a man chooses to withdraw his presence, that shift becomes thunderous in its silence. A woman accustomed to holding the emotional reins finds the grip weakening, not through confrontation, but through absence. That, my friend, is where the balance of power begins to tilt. At first, she might dismiss it. He's playing. Hard to get, she tells herself, a whisper of confidence covering the tremble of uncertainty. In a world where most men are predictably available, always checking in, always trying to please, a man's silence is a disruption. It breaks the rhythm she has come to expect. And when the rhythm breaks, the dance changes. This is not about manipulation. This is not a game, it's a revelation. For the first time, she is not certain where she stands. And uncertainty for someone who thrives on attention is more powerful than rejection. Why? Because it invites introspection. It invites longing. It invites respect if you've earned it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength, when exercised wisely, can turn the tables of any interaction, not by overpowering, but by retreating. When you are no longer the one seeking affirmation, you become the one to be affirmed. When your time becomes scarce, its value multiplies. Picture a man who was always present, reliable, eager, predictable. And then one day his energy shifts. He is still kind, still composed, but no longer orbiting around her. His attention now returns to his mission, his work, his growth. That's when the dynamic changes. She starts wondering. She begins watching. Her texts shift in tone, from confident to curious, from passive to probing. Not because she's fallen deeper in love, but because the balance of energy has shifted. This power shift isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It is felt in the moments. Between the texts that never arrive, the calls that don't come, the spaces once filled by his presence, now echoing with reflection. And slowly, she begins to realize something unnerving. She no longer has him where she thought she did. Here's the truth. Women are not afraid of men leaving. They are afraid of men growing indifferent, because indifference cannot be argued with. It cannot be seduced or guilted or coaxed back. Indifference means the emotional investment is no longer there. And once she senses that, the dynamic turns. She begins to recalibrate. The posts become more intentional. Her conversations become more vulnerable. Her demeanor softens. And not because she's faking it, but because she feels the void. A void left not by someone who ghosted, but by someone who simply stopped being emotionally available. That's the power of self-respect. It doesn't scream, it whispers, and those whispers carry weight. Let me share a story. A man, stoic and focused, dated a woman who was vibrant and full of fire. In the beginning, she led the rhythm, she set the pace, and he followed with sincerity. But he noticed something. Her interest began to dim the moment his was too predictable. So he stepped back, not with anger, but with intention. He let silence fill the space where his affection once lived. Days passed, then a week. She began to wonder, then to reach, not with performance but with sincerity, because the power had shifted. This isn't about dominance, it's about presence. Your presence, when scarce, reveals the quality of her. Desire, if it deepens, you've impacted her. If it fades, you've been a placeholder. Either way, clarity emerges, and clarity in any relationship is power. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom is not just doing as you please. It's being free from needing approval. When you can love without attachment, give without begging, and step back without fear, you embody a strength that most people only pretend to have. And that kind of man doesn't chase power, he simply lives in it. So if you feel the dynamic beginning to slip from your hands, don't grip harder, let go. Let the silence speak, let your absence clarify. Because when the power truly shifts, it doesn't shout, it is understood, deeply, intimately, undeniably. Number 4, attraction. Intensifies attraction is a flame that often grows brightest when oxygen is withheld. What seems like distance to the world becomes desire in the mind of the one left wondering. And in love, curiosity is often the first sign of deepening interest. When you step back, not to manipulate, but to live fully within your own purpose, you don't create distance, you create gravity. There is a strange truth in the way human emotion works. The more accessible something is, the less we tend to value it. We crave what we do not fully understand, what we cannot fully possess. This is especially true in romantic connection. Predictability can be comforting, but it rarely excites. And a man who is always present, always replying instantly, always validating without pause, becomes part of the background noise. He becomes expected, not desired. But remove that presence even slightly, and the mind begins to spin. Why hasn't he called? Why do I keep thinking about him? That gap where your voice once lived, your gaze once lingered, that gap becomes sacred in her memory. It's not the absence that ignites attraction, it's what the absence suggests: independence, mystery, and strength. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." When you shift your focus from pursuing her to pursuing your path, you waste nothing. You become captivating without effort. You become a storm she feels, even when it hasn't rained. I remember a man who dated a woman who was vibrant, full of opinions and energy. He cherished her but didn't chase her. When she began to pull back, he didn't fight it. He returned to his projects, his discipline, his quiet goals. She noticed, not immediately but eventually, and what returned was not her guilt. It was her interest. Because in his absence, she rediscovered the allure she had once taken for granted. That's the paradox. A woman often remembers your worth not in your presence, but in your distance. She replays your laughter, your strength, your silence. She reimagines what you might be thinking, and it's in that wondering, that not knowing, where attraction starts to swell, and then it grows. When she scrolls through her phone at night and sees no message from you, she feels a silence that is not quiet but roaring, a vacuum of attention, of warmth, of masculinity. She doesn't admit it out loud, maybe not even to herself, but the absence wraps around her thoughts like smoke, subtle but impossible to escape. The mind, left alone with its uncertainty, builds stories. She starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, whether you even think about her at all. And while her conscious self might fight it, her emotional body reacts. She dresses better when there's a chance she might see you. She replays your old conversations. She analyzes your last words like poetry, trying to extract hidden meaning. She might even date someone new, but he doesn't feel the same. He's available, eager, maybe even kind, but he lacks the weight your absence holds. He doesn't carry the depth of a man who walks his own path. And soon she realizes she's comparing everyone else to a ghost, because when your presence was earned and your absence felt, it means you matter. You become a standard by which others are measured. And rarely do they measure up, a high value. Man doesn't seek to be missed. He seeks to be himself. But in doing so, he leaves behind echoes. Not because he disappeared, but because his presence was never desperate. It was deliberate, powerful, rare. She'll feel it most in the quiet moments, when she's alone, when something good happens and you're not there to share it, when she hears a song that reminds her of how she used to feel with you. That's when attraction stops being surface level and becomes cellular, deep, lingering, real. So hold the silence, not as a punishment, but as a truth. Let your absence speak for you, because when it does, it tells a story that words cannot. Number 5, testing behavior. When your absence starts to linger in her world like a song she can't get out of her head, her next instinct isn't to forget, it's to test. Not because she's cruel, not because she's manipulative, but because her ego needs proof, her mind needs certainty, and her heart is at war with her pride. This is the silent battlefield where many men lose themselves, responding too soon, explaining too much, or breaking their frame out of emotional fatigue. Women test because they want answers without asking the question. They poke, prod, provoke, hoping you'll flinch. It's their way of deciphering whether your silence is power or punishment, whether you've moved on or you're just pretending. At first, these tests are subtle. She might view your stories on social media, like an old post. Drop a half-innocent comment in a mutual friend's conversation that she knows will reach your ears. It's the emotional equivalent of knocking on your mental door, softly, indirectly. But when you don't answer, she ups the volume. Suddenly, she's posting thirst traps, tagging herself at your favorite spots, flirting with others in a way she hopes gets back to you. All of it a performance not for the audience, but for your reaction. And this is the moment of truth, the moment where most men fail. The average man, starved for a sign she still cares, jumps at the bait. He likes her post, sends a message, opens the door she never actually knocked on. And just like that, he hands her back the power he fought. So hard to claim, but the Stoic man, the man of still waters and deep roots, understands the game without resenting the player. He sees the test for what it is, a signal that your absence is working, that it's touching something raw in her, that her control over the narrative is slipping, and so he does not move. He may respond, but never chase. He may acknowledge, but never over-explain, because he knows that true power doesn't need to assert itself. It simply remains. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you pass her tests, not by being clever but by being grounded, you redefine her idea of strength. You become not just the man she remembers, but the man she cannot figure out. And mystery, when coupled with integrity, is irresistible. These tests are not your enemy. They're confirmation. She's thinking, she's feeling, she's wondering. And even if she doesn't reach out directly, her actions are proof that your silence has penetrated her consciousness. There's a story I once heard of a man who, after walking away from a lukewarm relationship, focused entirely on rebuilding his life. He didn't block her, didn't ghost her. He simply redirected his energy. Months later, she resurfaced, not with love, but with curiosity. "How've you been?" she asked. But his life had already shifted, and because he had passed every silent test along the way, he no longer needed her validation. The greatest irony: she respected him more in his absence than she ever did in his presence. Because she realized he never needed her approval to be whole. He just needed space to be himself. So let her test, let her wonder, let her try, but never lose yourself in the proving. Because if she must test to trust you, let your silence be the answer. And if she must chase to remember your worth, let your distance be the mirror. In time, she'll see clearly. And by then, you'll already be far ahead, not in distance, but in depth. Number 6, exploring other options. Here's a silence that whispers truth louder than words ever could. If a woman's heart does not stir when you step away, then it was never truly anchored in the first place. This is a truth many resist, a bitter pill coated in excuses. But it is here, in the cold clarity of her indifference, that your greatest realization emerges. Your presence was never treasured. It was tolerated. Not every absence is mourned. Some are welcomed, even celebrated by those who were never truly invested. If your disappearance leaves no dent in her world, no echo in her thoughts, it tells you everything you need to know. And yet, so many men in denial of this truth cling to false hope. They tell themselves she's busy, that she'll come around, that she's just processing. But time reveals all, and sometimes the silence just confirms what you were afraid to accept. She was already halfway gone. This is the moment she begins to explore other options. Not necessarily out of spite, but from a place of vacancy. The emotional seat you once held is now empty, and the world she lives in offers no shortage of applicants. Perhaps a co-worker steps in with a compliment. Perhaps an old flame lights up her phone. Whatever the form, your absence created an opening, and she doesn't hesitate to see who else might fill it. It hurts, but it's also a revelation, because when someone moves on without resistance, it wasn't love they lost. It was convenience. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." Apply this to her reaction. If her truth is to move forward without looking back, believe her. Let that truth free you. For the man of virtue and vision, no time is wasted on doors that close with ease. It's easy to mistake temporary affection for true connection. But when a woman truly values you, she doesn't replace you overnight. She wrestles with her emotions. She questions her choices. She doesn't scroll through dating apps before the door has even closed. And yet, when she does, the man of substance does not chase. He does not compete. He does not diminish himself to recapture what was never fully his. He stands still, not in weakness, but in wisdom. Because the loss of something shallow is not a loss at all. There's a freedom in her exploration. It reveals her character, her priorities, her depth or lack thereof. And in that space you are given a gift, clarity. You no longer have to guess how she feels. Her actions answer the question, and with that answer you are liberated. Let her go where she wishes. Let her entertain who she will. You, the man who knows his worth, need not beg for presence or chase validation. You simply watch, and then you rise. For sometimes the best closure is no closure at all, only the silent acceptance that her journey no longer includes you. And that's okay, because your journey continues brighter and more focused without the weight of uncertainty. Number 7, final decision. There comes a point where speculation ends, where the mind no longer spins in questions and the heart no longer negotiates with silence. That point is the final crossroad. She either submits to your value or she moves on completely. And though both paths feel sharp with finality, only one reveals the truth you've been waiting for. When a woman truly sees your worth, not just glimpses it through convenience, but truly sees it, she returns with a different energy. Not with casual texts or breadcrumb attention, but with clarity, softness, and intent. Her approach changes. The games stop. The pride quiets. Because absence has done what no argument could. It's shown her who you are in your essence. A man who doesn't need to prove himself through noise. A man who commands presence in stillness, and when she returns with reverence, it is unmistakable. She doesn't test, she trusts. She doesn't manipulate, she cooperates. She doesn't demand your attention, she earns her place in your space. This isn't submission in the way the world often misuses the term. It is a recognition, a soul-level understanding that you are not to be taken lightly, that your presence was never owed, it was offered, and what is offered can be withdrawn. But if she doesn't return, if your absence is met with her silence or worse, indifference, then you've been gifted something just as valuable: freedom. Because she wasn't yours to begin with. She was a moment, not a partner, a lesson, not a legacy. Seneca once wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And so is walking away. So is letting someone leave when you still want them to stay. so is choosing your peace over the performance of being wanted. Too often, men mistake effort for love. They believe that chasing her means she's worth it, that fighting for her affirms her value. But real value doesn't need convincing. It recognizes itself in another. It stays when tested. It returns with intention, not confusion. There's a sacred power in letting go, not in bitterness, not in anger, but in calm acceptance. When she walks away and doesn't look back, she's making her truth known. And you, the man of depth and discipline, do not argue with truth. You receive it, you honor it, and then you rise from it. The world will try to tell you that losing a woman is the worst thing that can happen, that her departure is a verdict on your worth. But that's a lie sold by insecurity. The only thing worse than losing someone is losing yourself trying to keep them. So when she chooses her path, whether back to you or far from you, stand firm. Let her come or let her go, but never let her decision change your direction. Because the man who knows who he is never fears who leaves. Final reflection. By now, you understand something most men never do. Silence isn't absence. It's presence in its most disciplined form. It's the echo of dignity, the shadow of strength, and the mirror that reflects truth. Throughout this journey, you've seen how stepping back doesn't mean giving up. It means gaining clarity. It means allowing space to reveal what words never could. You've explored the layered truth behind distance, how absence reveals value, how silence challenges the ego, how detachment shifts power. You've seen how attraction deepens in mystery, how testing becomes her language when unsure, and how her interest, or lack thereof, shines through when options are many. You now know that whether she returns or walks away, your role remains the same: to remain centered, to remain whole. This isn't about strategy, it's about standards. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to forget because of the depth of your character, the strength of your silence, and the gravity of your presence. The man who walks with calm confidence needs no validation. He is not defined by being chosen, but by the values he chooses to live by. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." In the same spirit, the best response to being undervalued is not bitterness but distance, not noise but quiet, not reaction but reflection, and above all, not chasing but continuing. Continuing your journey, your growth, your life, with or without her. So if this message resonated with something deep in you, if it stirred the silent strength that you've buried beneath years of trying too hard, giving too much, or staying too long, let this be your shift. Not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Not as punishment to her, but as a return to you. Take a breath. Hold your power. Trust that the right people will never need to be impressed. They'll simply recognize what's real, and if they don't, their silence becomes your clarity. If anything in this journey moved you, left a mark, made you feel less alone, take a moment to reflect in the comments. Share your thoughts, your story, your strength. Someone else might be searching for the path you just began to walk. Subscribe to Stoic now if you want to continue discovering the quiet truths that shape strong men. We're not here to chase. We're here to build, to live, to lead. And remember, you are not defined by who stays. You are revealed by what you stand for. Let that be enough. Let that be powerful. Let that be your peace.